Hello and welcome to another episode of the Do the Work podcast. We are in slightly different surroundings today. I am in the home office because I couldn't quite get in the podcast studio, and I wanted to make sure that I still delivered some content for you guys until the next time we can get into the studio. So here we are. So hopefully the video and the sound works okay. Now today what I want to talk to you about is something that I've been challenging myself with for the most part of this year, and recently I achieved a bit of a milestone with regards to hitting my daily step count. So I'd hit 200 steps in a row, or 200 days in a row with my step target, and my step target has been 10,000 steps per day. Now many people see that as a really big achievement, and it is, but what I want to show you today is first of all how I've managed to achieve that, and then also how I help my clients hit their step counts as well. Now, a key part of this and a big clue as to how I help my clients achieve their step targets is that we don't set them a daily step target. What we do is we set them a weekly step target. So the first piece of this is going to be having a little look at how I help clients and how I set them up to be successful essentially with their step count. So when a new client comes to me, they are normally not doing too many steps. Quite often they have sedentary jobs and their average step count might be somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 steps, which is on the low side. And so what most people do when maybe they don't have a help of a coach, they try and just rank it up or ramp it up as high as they possibly can. And they try and go from 3,000 steps a day to 10,000 steps a day. And it's almost impossible to do all of the time. And so when someone then ultimately and inevitably fails on achieving the 10,000 steps per day, maybe it gets to Tuesday and you're sort of chained to the desk, so to speak, you're not able to do it, or the weather's really rubbish, you then don't achieve your 10,000, and then you're kind of like, oh, well, the rest of the week is knackered, so I might as well start again Monday, and then you've lost another few days where you could be making progress. And this is often how people go sort of on it and off it and be in the sort of all or nothing mindset, if you will. And that's what we want to be avoiding if we want to be making long-term and sustainable progress. So the way in which I set my clients up to combat this from happening is, rather than setting a daily step count, setting a weekly step count. And as well as that, setting a target that is actually achievable. So going from 3,000 to 10,000 is a bad idea, because you are setting yourself up for failure ultimately. And the key to sticking at things long term is to make sure that you are setting yourself up to be successful. Then if you're successful and the step target is maybe an average of 6,000 steps per day and you hit it, then and only then have you earned the right, I suppose, to then increase that step target, because you've been successful at 6 and maybe there's some room to be increasing it to 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever the target is that you've increased it to. But going back to setting it as a weekly step target, so for example, quite often I'll set my clients around 60,000 steps per week. Now what this means is, even if you've got a sedentary job and you have some days in there that are maybe 4,000 or 5,000, you've still got an opportunity at the weekend to be successful over the course of the week. Even if that means having to do a couple of days that are at 15,000 Saturday and Sunday when you've got the whole day off, rather than trying to do 8, 9, 10,000 on a day where you're sat at your desk 9 till 5, you've got to sort the kids out, you've still got to do your training, make your food, all of that stuff, and it can seem almost impossible to do. So what you want to do is lighten the load a little bit, and also make it so that even if Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday or whatever hasn't gone totally to plan, you still haven't failed, and you've still got an opportunity to achieve your target over the course of the week. And that's how I set my clients up. They're reporting on their step counts on a Sunday in their check-in, and they total the week. So even if they've had a day where, I hope they haven't, but even if they've had a day where they've done 1,000 steps, they've got an opportunity still to be successful that week. And the vast majority of time and the vast majority of reasons as to why people stop and fail is because they set themselves up to fail. And one bit of failure, e.g. not hitting 10,000 and hitting 3,000 and then kind of hitting the fuck it button, then maybe not going to the gym, then not doing the steps the next day and maybe ordering takeaway or whatever it might be, that's when we run into problems, and that's when we develop this sort of all or nothing mindset. So having that target laid out over the course of the week sets you up for success. And as I said earlier, having the target laid out so that it is something that you can actually do. Obviously, it should be more than the average of what you're doing now per day. but not so much more that you have to completely change everything. You want to be able to just make some subtle changes into your life to increase that step count, be that parking further away, walking to the shop, taking the steps rather than the lift, walking on the escalator, going for a walk at lunch, or in the morning or at night, or whenever you can kind of fit it in, opting to do the coffee run. All these little things can add up to, a reasonable amount more steps. And over the course of the week, that might get you another 5, 10, 15, even 20,000 steps by just incorporating those things. And then if you consider that you've got all day off at weekend, you can then go out and do an hour's walk Saturday and Sunday, and then have some higher days and essentially achieve that weekly step count target. Now, referring back to what I said with regards to me achieving 200 days in a row of 10,000 steps, personally, I'm quite happy having a daily step target. And the reason that this worked for me and the reason I've achieved it is, first of all, I set the target. So I actually had a number in mind that I wanted to achieve. Now, the first target was to get to 50, then it was 100, and then it was 200. So I created a situation where I could not allow myself to fail. So failure wasn't an option. Missing a day's steps wasn't an option. And it meant me doing some stuff that most people aren't willing to do, or maybe they find it a little bit weird. So maybe I would, it might be a wet night and I couldn't get out, in terms of it being, it was raining outside. And so I had 1,000 steps to do. So I was pacing up and down the front room, or going up and down the stairs, or whatever, to ensure that I hit those 10,000 steps. And I just created a situation where I was unwilling not to hit that. And there are a few days within that where I would look at my watch and I'd be about to get into bed and I'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake, I've still got like 300 steps to do. So then I would go and I would do my 300 steps. And at the end of the day, that target allowed me to basically create a situation where I was just unwilling to fail and I had to get it done. And within that time, I hit every day, and I'm now just in a process of it being just something that I do. And more often than not, it just happens because of the habits that I've got in place, in terms of going for a walk every day, in terms of, just generally being quite active, etc. So there's obviously two different thought processes there in terms of how you can hit your step count. A daily step count isn't for everyone. I'm in a situation where I can go for a dog walk or whatever during the day, and I can set my life up in that way because of the nature of working quite a lot in the morning and quite a lot at night, which is a little bit different to someone who maybe works 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 8 to 4, whatever. So for those people, and for the people who I'm talking about, like my clients, it is much better to set a weekly step target, so that even when you've got days where you've ultimately not got to your kind of like daily target or daily preference that you might have, you've still given yourself that chance and opportunity to be successful over the course of the week. And that way, as I say, you set yourself up to be successful rather than to fail. And you'll know this from setting, crazy targets, like I'm going to go to the gym 4 days a week, and then one day it's 2 days, and then it's like, oh, forget it, I'll just quit. And so it has to be the same with our step count as well. We have to set ourselves, a challenging enough target so that it's more than what we're doing now, as I've said previously. But also it needs to be something that we can actually do, and we need to set our lives up so that that target can be hit. Therefore, going from 3,000 to 10,000 is too much of an ask. So maybe going from 3,000 to an average of maybe like 7,500 a day, maybe we might make that 55, 60,000 over the course of the week. And then that way we give ourselves an opportunity to overachieve on days that are a little bit quieter and not worry too much. As I say, if we have days where we are stuck at our desk, which ultimately just sometimes happens, and maybe you then don't have to be like me and about to get in bed and have to do another 500 steps or what have you. But that was just something that worked for me. Also, just a little thing that worked for me as well is having some public accountability around it. So telling people that my target was, and mainly clients really, that my target was 50 and then 100 and then 200, because people knew about it. I told people about it. I shared it on social media, and that meant that I couldn't let people down in that sense. Not that they would be bothered as such, but it would bother me that I hadn't done what I said I was going to do. So having a little bit of public accountability always helps me as well. But the key themes here, to kind of summarize, so going back to the start, set a weekly target. That's what's going to be better for most people, and that's how I coach my clients. A weekly target, and don't try and go from 3,000 steps per day to 10,000 steps per day right away. So a happy medium somewhere in between, that is something that you can do that is more than what you're doing now, and that is spread out over the course of the week so that you can actually be successful. And then you feel good, you feel motivated, you feel happy that you've actually achieved the target that you've set, rather than being pissed off that you didn't achieve the silly target that you set that was miles more than what you did before. Then we're creating a situation where we feel good about what we're doing, and we can slowly build on it from there. And we've got to remember, ultimately, we are increasing our step count, yes, to feel happier and have better mental health, better fitness levels and all of that stuff, but ultimately to expend more calories, expend more energy. And by going from an average of 3,000 steps a day to an average of 6,000 or 7,000 steps per day, you're doubling it. So you're increasing your expenditure a lot. And then that can tie in nicely and ensure you've still got room to do, your strength training at the gym and whatever else you need to do outside of that as well. So hopefully that's helped you realize that you can be successful with your steps, no matter what your job, no matter how busy you are, no matter what requirements and responsibilities that you've got, providing that you're realistic with your expectations and that you set your life up so that you can be successful. Thanks for tuning in for today's episode. I hope you found it useful. And if you did, you've got the power to share this message as well. So if you have a friend who might find this content useful, please share it with them. And we'll see you on the next episode.